Welcome to The Bitter Witness.
Don't be scared.
Hello. Welcome back. I'm Rebecca, and I'm your host for The Bitter Witness. I hope you've had a good couple weeks. I have been so insanely busy with my new show. I'm loving every second of it, but just so busy. And sometimes it's good to take a break from murder and death and just enjoy the living for a little bit. I have no idea what the hell is going on with the weather in Ontario. One day we're up to a beautiful, hot, sunny 18 degrees, and the next day it's a blizzard. Spring is trying to get here, and if winter would kindly fuck right off, we could get into our gardens. I know we still have another month to wait, but I really want to get into the dirt. That's about it for my little corner of Ontario. Let's get the business out of the way. If you like this episode or any episode, please head on over to the Patreon page and give the show some love. For less than a ticket to the theater, you can help me keep bringing you crime cases each week. You can also show your support on Spotify, and don't forget to give the show a 5-star review over on Apple. Apparently, it helps the show in the ridiculously confusing algorithm. Like, follow, and share the show on whatever platform you're listening to. Stop by our Facebook page and leave a comment or share a post with everyone you know or don't know for that matter. Everyone is welcome here. That's enough of the business. Let's get to this week's case, shall we? The dogs are sleeping behind me, so puppy ASMR will be brought to you by both Miley and Piper this week. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, and relax while I tell you about the stalking case of Dave Kroupa. As always, I want to give the victims in the case top billing. And, like in so many of our cases, there are numerous victims. So to Dave and everyone who has been affected by this case, I acknowledge you and send my love to you wherever you may be. Jealousy, in its most destructive form, can warp a person's perception of reality to such an extent that the unthinkable becomes a distortedly logical solution. This descent into madness often begins with an intense feeling of lack, a perceived deprivation of something another possesses, whether it be a relationship, success, or status. It festers and intensifies consuming thoughts and fueling a burning resentment. The object of desire becomes an obsession, and the jealous individual fixates on obtaining it at any cost. The corrosive nature of extreme jealousy permeates the brain, particularly impacting areas responsible for rational thought and emotional regulation. Decision-making and impulse control can be overwhelmed by the brain's emotional center, triggering a cascade of intense, often irrational feelings. Common sense and empathy are eroded as the jealous individual becomes increasingly self-centered and blinded by their desire. The ability to consider the consequences of their actions diminishes and is replaced by a desperate, tunnel-visioned focus on eliminating any and all perceived obstacles on the path to obtain what they covet. For Dave Kroupa, life took a terrifying turn he never saw coming. Seeking simple companionship, he was unaware that he was entering a labyrinth of unrelenting harassment, complete removal of his privacy, and unending threats to himself and those he loved. The mental and emotional toll left him grappling with fear, paranoia, and the profound realization that the very fabric of his life had been irrevocably altered. Dave Kroupa and Amy Flora started dating in 2000. Amy stated that she was attracted to Dave's dorkiness and she found herself falling fast for Dave. Dave states that the next thing the two of them knew, they were happy, in love, and had 2 kids. But the two were working opposite shifts. Dave worked days and Amy worked nights. Their relationship slowly started to crumble apart, and after a while, things just weren't the same. Amy made the painful decision to leave Dave and move back home to Omaha, Nebraska. Dave, not wanting to be apart from his children, decided to move there as well. Even though his and Amy's relationship was over, he was still a father and wanted to live up to that expectation. Dave suddenly found himself single and living in a new place where he knew absolutely no one except Amy. He got himself a job as a mechanic, found a single-bedroom apartment, and decided to look into this website called Plenty of Fish. He was lonely and was looking for companionship. Dave stated that he was single and 35 and he wanted to make the best of his new single life. He created a profile, but initially there were no matches for Dave. A few days after he had created the profile, Dave decided to go back on the site and try again. When he signed on, there was a message from a 34-year-old woman, Liz Goyer. Her profile stated that she owned and operated Liz's housekeeping service. Dave said that through their chats, she seemed really nice and very down to earth. She loved animals, she had 2 dogs, a cat, and a big snake. They had many things in common. They both had 2 children, both a boy and a girl. They both liked heavy metal music and motorcycles. So the two decided to meet. According to Dave, Liz was outgoing and fun. The relationship with Liz was perfect for him. According to Dave, he had made it very clear to Liz that he didn't want to be tied down. And according to Liz, she wanted exactly the same thing. So as far as Dave knew, it was a perfectly casual thing. Then one day, as Dave was at work, Cari Farver came into the shop. Dave says his first thought was, "Wow, she's really pretty." Dave helped her with her car problems, and that was it. Cari left. Dave figured he would never see her again. After all, she was just a customer. A couple of weeks later, Dave was back on Plenty of Fish, and he ran across Cari's profile. He made contact with her, and the two met up for a first date. Cari was a local girl who was both sexy and smart. She had gone back to college after having her child Max and found her calling, computers. Dave claimed that Cari was totally out of his league. But he asked her back to his place anyway, and she said yes. The two had literally walked through the door of Dave's apartment, hadn't even got their coats off, and Dave's buzzer was ringing. Dave went down to answer the door, and there stood Liz. Liz told Dave that she needed to get something out of his apartment. Dave went back up to Cari and had to have what was most likely one of the most awkward conversations ever. "Hi, I know we've just met and we just got back here, but there's this chick downstairs who I took out on a few dates a few weeks ago who needs to come up and grab something." So Cari decided to leave. Dave said that as Cari left, she and Liz had eye contact for about 3 seconds. And with that, Liz went up to the apartment. After Liz finally got what she wanted and left the apartment, Dave called Cari, and she said, "I'm halfway home. Why don't you just come over to my place?" Dave headed over, and when he got there, Cari said to him, "This is just for fun, okay? We're not going to get married, and we're not dating. It's just fun." Dave was thrilled because that was exactly what he wanted. It turned out that Cari worked only 3 blocks from Dave's apartment. So the two started spending a lot of time together, and Cari started spending several nights at Dave's apartment. Dave says it wasn't all just sex between the two. They were really enjoying each other's company. 2 weeks after he and Cari had met, on November 13th, 2012, Dave got up at 6 a.m. to go to work. He gave Cari a kiss before he headed out. At about 10 a.m., Dave received a text from Cari. All it said was, "Hey, we should move in together." Dave replied with a simple text reading, "I thought we talked about this." Dave was a little confused about Cari's request because it had been Cari who had first stated that they were just having fun and this wasn't gonna get serious. As far as Dave knew, neither one of them had wanted to move in together or have a serious relationship. Dave says that the instant he hit send on his reply to Cari, he got a barrage of texts back from Cari. "Fine, fuck you. You've ruined my life. I never want to see you again." Which would make me think simply that, okay, this chick has gone psycho. But Dave went home at lunch because he was confused. This didn't seem like the same Cari that he had left that morning. But when he got back to his apartment, there was no sign of Cari. Everything was gone out of his apartment, of hers. Toothbrush, bag, everything. It was like she was never there. Dave was a little sad that it didn't work out, but he just told himself that you really can't know a person when you first meet them, and he and Cari had only met each other a couple weeks earlier. So Dave decided to move forward and chalked it up to being part of the dating scene. I absolutely hated the dating scene. Ugh, it is the worst. You literally have to shave everything every day just in case you get a date that night and don't have time to run home and prepare. It was maybe one of the most exhausting times of my life. You do all this work to look good, to find the one person in the world who can love you even when you haven't shaved, haven't showered, and are literally being a slug. A couple of days after Cari had left, Dave started receiving texts from her again. "You're a bastard. I'm going to destroy the things you care about. Your life will be ruined." So now it appears Cari has passed psycho and landed right in the realm of demon monster bitch. She's threatening to destroy his life after just 2 weeks of hanging out and having sex. It seems a bit disproportionate, maybe a bit over the top. Nancy Rainey, Cari's mother, knew that Cari had recently met somebody and that the guy lived just a couple blocks from where Cari worked. She also knew that Cari had been spending several nights at the guy's place. So when Nancy hadn't heard from Cari for a while, she wasn't really all that worried. Nancy knew what new relationships were like, and Cari was the type of person that would tell you what was on her mind. So, as far as Nancy knew, everything was fine. But after a few days, Nancy started to get a little concerned. After a few more days, Nancy was really worried. There was absolutely no contact from Cari. Nancy filed a missing persons report. That was about all she could do. Cari was an adult. The day after Nancy filed the missing persons report, Dave was at work and 2 sheriffs walked through the door. They told Dave that Cari's mom had filed the missing persons report, and they started asking Dave where Cari is. And when Dave said, "I have no idea," the 2 sheriffs immediately became suspicious of Dave. And the questions started getting a little bit more intense. So Dave pulled out his cell phone and showed the 2 sheriffs all the horrible messages that he had been getting from Cari. Once the sheriffs read the messages, they simply thought that it was a bad breakup between Dave and Cari and that she must have gone somewhere to be alone for a while and get over it. No big deal. The sheriffs went back to Nancy and told her about the bad breakup between Cari and Dave and said, give her some time. She'll probably show up. After the sheriffs had told Nancy this, Nancy started getting messages from Cari on Facebook. Cari told Nancy that she wasn't missing, just that she didn't want to come home right now. Cari said that she loved her and all she needed was a little bit of time. On Mother's Day, Cari texted Nancy to say Happy Mother's Day and that she loved her. But Nancy says that after that Mother's Day text, Cari's messages started getting shorter and farther in between. Eventually, the messages became mean and nasty, which although, according to Nancy, they had issues in the past, Nancy had no idea why Cari would have been upset with her, upset enough to cut all contact except for these short, mean messages that were coming in. It had been a few weeks since Liz had been around. The last time Dave saw her was the night Cari was at his apartment. But the night after the sheriff showed up at Dave's work, Liz came to the apartment. It was a little odd that she would just show up, but when Dave and Liz had last seen each other, they were on good terms, so Dave didn't really think much about it. When Dave answered the door, Liz said to him, "Come here, I have something to show you." She brought him over to her car, and he instantly saw that her entire side of her car had been keyed. While Liz and Dave are standing in the parking lot looking at the damage to Liz's car, Liz's phone goes off, and there are multiple messages from Cari saying things like, "I will do more unless you leave Dave alone. You're a whore," and all of the other wonderful things that go along with that. So let's just stop and take stock of where we are in this case. We have this weird love triangle going on. Dave finds himself single and lonely and wants to try and find someone. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. He meets a couple girls and he's hanging out with both of them. According to Dave, he was upfront with both of them by way of saying he didn't want to be tied down and that he was just looking for something fun with no commitments. And if that's the case, if he did in fact make sure that the women understood that and the women accepted, then hey, who are we to judge? If something makes you happy, then do it. Jesus, you only have so much time here. Why would you want to spend it being miserable? But now it appears that one of the women he's dating is a wee bit fucking psycho, doesn't it? And the fact that it's Cari that is behaving this way is odd because, according to Dave, she was the one who first said, "Hey man, if we hook up, it's just for fun and I don't want to be tied down to you." But in any event, the messages have now escalated to actual harm, not directly to a person, but on Liz's car. So that's concerning, isn't it? You might think that Cari would see Liz as someone in the same position as herself. It seems as though Cari is feeling victimized by Dave, perhaps even believing that he is cheating on her. There's some possessiveness vibes coming out in the messages. But instead, Cari is starting to attack Liz, telling her and Dave that if Cari can't have Dave, then neither will Liz, and she's going to make both of your lives miserable in the meantime until he takes Cari back. No, thank you. With Liz's car getting keyed, Dave decided it was time to inform the police of what was going on. He was starting to get a little worried that someone might get hurt. Up to that point, it was all just nasty messages, but with the keying of Liz's car, Cari had stepped over the line. In comes a police officer with the Omaha Police Force. In fact, a special victims unit detective, Chris LeGros. LeGros specialized in domestic violence and stalking. He stated that the case was actually something they see quite often. It was a jealous ex-girlfriend who was sending emails and was just at the beginning stages of stalking. LeGros looked into the case and he realized that for the first few days of the text, Cari was sending messages to Dave from her cell phone. But then the messages started coming in from other numbers, 30 to 40 different numbers each day. Dave said that the faster he blocked the numbers, the faster Cari was sending messages from new numbers. Dave was being inundated with threatening texts. And then Cari, in one of her messages, stated that she was in fact watching Dave. The exact same thing was happening with the emails that Dave was getting from Cari. At first, they were coming from her email, and then the emails were coming from all different addresses. He was receiving hundreds of emails and hundreds of texts each day from Cari, and every single one was either an insult or a threat. Limp dick, asshole, you still want me in your life. I'll take away your happiness. See how you like it. I should cut your heart out. I will follow you. I will never let you be with anyone but me. I have people who are going to get you for me. Okay, she's off the fucking rails now, people. Can you imagine what this felt like for Dave? All the guy wanted to do was meet someone and have some fun. He didn't sign up for the psycho part of relationships. And the volumes of texts and emails a day would be exhausting. Then Cari's messages started describing customers that Dave was talking to while he was at work. In one of the messages that Cari sent to Dave at work, she described what a female customer was wearing down to her shoes and then stated that she wanted to slice her throat, but she was only a customer, not a girlfriend. Cari was definitely on a path of escalation. So Legros started staking out Dave in an attempt to find Cari. Wherever Dave was, Legros would be staked out and he would survey the area, trying to see where Cari could be so that she was watching Dave. But Legros couldn't find her. Legros knocked on doors all over, but no one claimed to have seen her. It was like Cari was a ghost. Then one night, while Dave was in his apartment, he receives a text from Cari saying that she was in an apartment building inside his apartment complex, apartment building 12. Dave set out to find her, but when he reached building number 11, he realized there was no building 12. It was just another game Cari was playing. Okay, imagine Dave's mind as he's walking through the complex looking for building 12. I'm going to talk to her and get this all sorted out. Maybe I should have called the cops. What if she has a gun? Or if she isn't there and she's just gotten herself into his apartment while he's out? Has she got someone at building 12 to beat the crap out of me? By the time I got to building 11, I would have been a blubbering mess. And then when you realize you have to walk back to your apartment alone, knowing that she knows you've left your place and gone looking for her, like, could you imagine? I would have had a bleeding ulcer by the time I reached building 5. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a mind fuck. A few days after the building 12 incident, Cari texted Dave pictures from inside Liz's house. Cari was inside of Liz's house. Inside. Cari told Dave that Liz had left her garage door open. She sent Dave pictures of each room as she was walking through, and messaging things like, I wonder if she's here. Luckily, Liz and her kids weren't home. Dave immediately contacts Liz, and both of them go to Liz's home together and find that Liz's car is in the garage and it has been keyed again, and the word whore, among other wonderful words, has been spray painted on the walls of her garage. Liz and Dave call the police and file a report. Another escalation for Cari. Legros was doing everything he could, but he could not find Cari. Wherever she was watching Dave from, she was very well hidden, and there was nothing that he could really do other than stake out where Liz and Dave were and hope that he would catch Cari while she's stalking Liz and Dave. So at this point, Dave is feeling pretty guilty because Liz has gotten caught up in this mess and is being stalked and attacked, all because he went out on a date with Cari. He said at that point he just wanted to protect Liz because none of this was her fault. She was an innocent victim. So Dave asked Liz and her kids to stay with him. And Dave says that their relationship sort of rekindled at that point, and they became a little bit more serious than what they had before. In January of 2013, almost 2 months after the harassment began, Dave was returning home from work when he noticed a familiar vehicle in a nearby parking lot. As he got closer, he realized it was Cari's Ford Explorer. Of course, having worked on the car, he knew that it was Cari's. So he took a photo of the license plate and sent it to the detective, Legros. The police immediately descended on the parking lot and took the Ford Explorer into custody, and they processed the car. But the only thing they found was an unidentified fingerprint on a mint container in the console of Cari's car. But still, no Cari. Meanwhile, Amy Flora, Dave's ex-partner and the mom of his kids, was starting to get worried for Dave and for her children. At this point in the timeline, their kids were still going over to Dave's on the weekends, but the kids were starting to hear what was going on with Cari and all the threats against Dave and Liz. So Amy told Dave that because of the vandalism and the threats and everything else, she didn't think it was a good idea for the kids to go over to his house anymore, but he was welcome to come to her house and stay with the kids there. Smart decision on Amy's part, I have to say. Dave, of course, agreed because what good dad wouldn't? And Dave is a really good dad. Things were getting insane for him at his place, and he couldn't even guesstimate when all of this was going to end. The police still couldn't find Cari. Legros had been able to get an arrest warrant for her, but unless you can find the person named in the warrant, you really can't arrest them. And by that, in essence, stop the harassment and attacks. For a few weeks, Dave and Liz are living at Dave's apartment with her kids, and Dave is going over to Amy's on the weekends to spend the weekend with his own kids. Things seem to be going as smoothly as they can be expected. After a few weeks, Liz calls Dave at work and tells him, "One of the windows in your apartment has been smashed out, and the apartment looks like someone has ransacked it." Dave went home, and when he walked into his apartment, he found his place completely overturned, and in red lipstick on the wall over Dave and Liz's bed were the words, "Go away, whore." And then on the bed were several pieces of Liz's clothing. Each of them had been sliced and hacked to pieces. After a few weeks after the break-in at the apartment, Dave received a text from Cari saying that she had set the whore's house ablaze. Dave immediately went to Liz's house, and thankfully Liz and her 2 kids weren't there, but all of Liz's pets were killed in the fire. The 2 dogs, the cat, and the snake. Cari is escalating very fast. I just have to say that once you kill animals, you are officially a shit snake in my books forever. Legros has called in a few other investigators to walk through Liz's house. He said there were overt signs of arson. Everything had been doused in gas, and there were matches all over the place. Cari was telling the truth in the text. She did, in fact, set Liz's house on fire. After the fire, Liz is interviewed by Legros, and during the interview, she tells Legros that a girl that dated her boyfriend for 2 weeks named Cari has been stalking her since November, and that Cari has messaged her and told her that she wants to kill both Liz and her kid. After the fire, Liz moved away from Omaha, Nebraska. Do you blame her? And this time, she didn't tell Dave where she was. She had had enough, and she was scared for her kids and her own safety. And I probably would have done the same thing. But that left Dave all alone. And the one person in the world who understood what he was going through was gone. Liz just took off. And so now he literally has no one that understands what's going on with him. So Dave decided to move. He got a new job. He changed phones. In a way, he rebuilt his life as far away as he could get from Cari without being too far from his kids. Investigators had found that Cari had been diagnosed as bipolar. And when they searched her home, they found that she hadn't taken any of her medication with her, wherever she was. So sadly, they basically chalked up her behavior to her being off her meds. But they still couldn't find her. Dave and Liz were both now in new locations, and basically Cari's attacks and messages stopped. And after a few months, the case went cold. About a year later, we're now in the spring of 2015, and we're in Pottawatomie? I think that's how you say it. Pottawatomie County, Iowa. At the sheriff's office, Sergeant Jim Doty had heard about this case. From the rumblings, he had heard that 2 detectives were looking into the missing person, Cari Farver, but no one had physically seen her in 2 years. But she had apparently been communicating through texts and emails. And at the same time, officers in Omaha, Nebraska were investigating Cari for arson and harassment and threats and vandalism. But the cases had gone cold. The case piqued Jim's interest. So he and his best friend, investigator Ryan Avis, decided they wanted to take a crack at it. So the 2 besties went to their boss and asked if they could take over the case. And their boss agreed, and the case was theirs to investigate. First, Jim and Ryan went to see Nancy, Cari's mom. Nancy lived in Macedonia, Iowa. Nancy told Jim and Ryan that she hadn't seen Cari since November 13th, 2012. She said that after Cari had left, she had received messages from her that told her that Cari had taken a job in Kansas and that she was going to be making $100,000 a year, and that Max, Cari's son, had to stay with Nancy until Cari got settled. Nancy stated that she was fine if Cari had decided to just leave and be away from everyone, but she needed to know that she was okay, that she wasn't sick or hurt. By this point, Dave had pretty much gotten his life sorted out. He was in a new apartment, found a new job, but he was still lonely. And he figured that because things had settled down with Cari for the past year, he was good to try and start dating again. So he went onto another dating site and created a profile. Dude, join a sports club or something to meet someone. Jesus. If I was him, the last thing I would be doing would be going on any dating site. I understand about being lonely, but there are other ways to meet people. Anyways, he's on the site and he starts chatting with people. And eventually he meets a woman on the site. The 2 start chatting and they really hit it off. So the 2 agree to set up a date. Dave goes to the restaurant to meet the girl, and he sits there for about an hour past the meeting time, and it seems like she's ghosting him. But then she sends him a message saying she's stuck at work, but she's coming, and please, please, please wait for her. So he sits there for another hour or more, and then his phone goes off. Dave figures it's the girl saying, "Sorry, but I can't make it tonight." But when he reads the message, it says, quote, "This is Cari, fuck you," unquote. Dave stated, quote, "I had fucked up and let Cari back into my life," unquote. "Yeah, you did, dude. Jesus." She was probably on every single dating site waiting for him to make a profile. I found this case on Netflix on the documentary Lover, Stalker, Killer, I think it's called. And I'm watching this documentary, and literally when I saw the words, "This is Cari, fuck you," my stomach dropped down to my toes. Oh, I felt so bad for this guy. Oh my God, he just wanted to have some fun. But here we go again. The messages and emails started again for Dave. Hundreds and hundreds of them each and every day. But this time, because Liz was out of the picture, and even Dave didn't know where Liz was living, Cari started targeting Amy, Dave's ex and the mom of his kids, who had done nothing. Amy started getting messages from Cari. Things like, "I'm going to get rid of you," "Stay away from Dave," "You're a whore." And at the same time, Dave was getting messages from Cari saying, "I'm going to slit Amy's throat. You're going to be mine. She can't have you." Ridiculous, ridiculous messages from Cari. But then Cari started including Dave and Amy's kids into the threats. One day, Amy took the kids to the park for some playtime. While she's there with the kids, her phone goes off. And there's a message from Cari saying that one of the kids was on the slide and that Amy was pushing the other in a swing, which is exactly what they were doing at that moment. Amy was, of course, terrified because Cari was close enough to see them. And if she was close enough to see them, she was close enough to hurt them. Amy grabbed the kids and they rushed home. Then things started to get even worse. Cari started threatening to slit Dave and Amy's kids' throats in their sleep. Shortly after those messages started, Amy woke up in the middle of the night, and in the living room, she found her son laying on the couch, sleeping, holding a baseball bat. Amy woke him up to send him back to his room, and he said, "I have to sleep here. I need to protect you and my sister." That's heartbreaking. At the time, their son was only about 9 or 10, I think. Now, Dave is really worried about his family. So his father, Dave's father, went out and bought him a gun. A pistol, to be exact. Dave wasn't really happy about it, but things were bad. Cari was threatening to kill his kids. So Dave accepted the gun. You guys, violence doesn't make violence stop. It only makes more violence. That includes guns. Guns only make things worse. I understand, though, why he took the gun. I completely understand it, and I can't say that I wouldn't have taken the gun from my dad. If this same situation was happening with me and my kids, and my dad handed me a pistol to keep in the house for protection, I probably would have taken it too. Although I don't like guns at all, and I don't know anything about them, and I'd probably shoot myself in the foot instead of shooting anybody who was attacking us, but I digress. So Dave kept the gun on the top shelf of his closet, locked inside the case so that the kids couldn't get it. But if he needed to, he'd be able to reach it quickly if something were to happen. Meanwhile, Jim and Ryan, the two detectives, were sifting through all of the evidence that had been collected by the original investigators in the case. According to the messages that Cari had sent her mom Nancy, she was moving to Kansas. But when Jim and Ryan looked at the photos taken of Cari's house, there was no sign that she was moving anywhere. She hadn't taken anything with her. No clothing, no shoes. Her jacket was hanging on the back of a chair. Literally, her house in the pictures looked like she had just run out to the store. So Jim and Ryan decided to get Cari's bank records. And there were 2 purchases made the day after she was last seen. And after that, there was nothing. She didn't withdraw any money. She just stopped using her bank accounts. I don't care who you are, you kind of need money to exist in this world. And Cari wasn't disgustingly wealthy where she would have a wall safe filled with stacks of $100 bills. Jim and Ryan were pretty certain that Cari hadn't left on her own, and they actually didn't think Cari was alive. But they really only had their gut feelings. There was no proof. They decided to stop looking at the case like a missing persons or a stalking case and start looking at the case as if it was a death investigation. And if they were going to be looking at the case as if Cari was dead, then that meant they needed to find out who was sending the messages saying they were Cari. Enter Special Investigator Tony Cava, an IT genius and a volunteer deputy who works with Jim and Ryan at the sheriff's office. And I think I love this guy. In the documentary, he enters the screen carrying a bottle of Soylent, a thermos of coffee, and a cup of coffee. He names them all, and after each one he says, "Which contains caffeine. A man after my own heart." And in case you don't know, Soylent is a meal replacement drink made from powdered soy. Nope, I'll stick with my tea. Thanks, Tony. Tony had his work cut out for him when he came onto this case. There were literally hundreds of thousands of messages from Cari, and it was Tony's job to figure out where the messages were coming from. Tony very quickly, because he's a genius, realized that he needed a way to sort through all the IP addresses from the hundreds and thousands of messages. Whoever was writing and sending these messages had been using VPNs, which are virtual private networks. They apparently hide your IP address. Proxies, which are like a go-between between your IP address and the internet. So if you use a proxy, the website that you go to doesn't see your IP address. It sees the IP address of the proxy. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't understand computer. It's not my jam. I'm into murder, so sorry. The sender, whoever it was, had even used public Wi-Fi to send the messages like Starbucks or McDonald's. But Tony needed to find an actual location. Somewhere inside these millions of IP addresses, he needed to sort them out and categorize them to see which ones were being used the most. So there was really no computer program out there that would do that work for him in the time span that he needed. So he just wrote his own program, which he called Dex. You know, like geniuses do. The last program I wrote on a computer was on a Radio Shack computer, and I was able to make giant bars of colors show up on the screen. I thought I was so smart. Anyways, Tony asked his program to weed out the top 10 IP addresses that were used the most in all of the messages. Out of the top 10, 8 were VPNs, which apparently you can't do anything with. But the very top IP address that was used the most times in all those hundreds of thousands of messages was 174.71.6.113. And that IP address belonged to a physical house in Council Bluffs, Iowa. And the house in Council Bluffs, Iowa was the home of a man named Todd Butterbaugh. Todd worked for the Pottawatomie County as a network administrator, meaning Tony was his boss. Okay, can you say shocker? because that was a shocker. So Jim, Ryan, and Tony quickly hid all of their files so that Todd wouldn't be able to see what was going on in the case, because as an IT guy and working for the county, Todd would be able to access the investigation files. Then they served a search warrant on Todd's house, and they found tons of computers and all the usual stuff you would expect to find at an IT guy's house. Jim and Ryan asked Todd if anyone else had been living with him and would have had access to his Wi-Fi. Todd told Jim and Ryan that he had had an on-again, off-again girlfriend who had been living with him ever since her house burned down. And her name was Liz Goyer. Uh-oh. Can you say hard 180? Whew. So that was a little bit of a shocker, huh? Once Jim, Ryan, and Tony found out that Liz had been staying with Todd for years using his Wi-Fi, they were able to piece together everything, and the final picture was fucked up. Since the day that Cari had gone missing, Liz had been impersonating Cari with all the threats, all the messages to everyone. Dave, Nancy, even this bitch even messaged Max, Cari's son, pretending to be Cari. Liz burnt down her own house, killing her own pets. Liz was the stalker, not Cari. Oh my God, what an absolute shit demon. Not only did this bitch kill her own pets and burning down her own house, but she messaged Cari's son pretending to be Cari. Max was only around 13 or 14 when Cari had disappeared. There are not enough curse words for you, Liz. You are simply atrocious. End of sentence. Jim and Ryan went to see Dave and told him what they had found out, that it was actually Liz who was doing all this, and that they believed that Liz had murdered Cari. Dave stated that his brain was spinning, and all he could do was cry. Jim and Ryan were certain that Liz had everything to do with Cari's disappearance, but they only had evidence proving that Liz had posed as Cari and been the stalker. They needed more. So, what do you do when you're stuck? You go back to the evidence. The original detectives on the case had truly believed that Liz was a victim of Cari's because of the threatening messages she had received. So about a month after Cari had gone missing, the detectives had asked Liz if they could download the messages from her phone. Because, she was a victim. Inside everything that was downloaded from Liz's phone way back when, Jim found a picture of Cari's vehicle. The picture was taken on Christmas Eve of 2012, which was a little over a month from when Cari disappeared. He knew it was Cari's car because the picture actually had the license plate attached to the car. According to the original detectives, Cari's car wasn't found and taken into custody until January 8th, 2013. And because this picture was dated Christmas Eve, that meant that Liz knew where Cari's car was before it was found by the police. And back in 2013, when the original police officers finally got their hands on Cari's car and processed it, remember they found a fingerprint on a mint container that was in the center console? Well, guess whose print that was on the mint container? It was Liz's print. Gotcha. Well, kinda gotcha, bitch. But the print on the mint tin still didn't answer where Cari was or what happened to her. But it did prove that Liz had been inside Cari's car prior to January 8th, 2013, when the car was taken into police custody. So Jim and Ryan placed a GPS tracker onto Liz's car so they could keep tabs on her. They didn't know what she was going to do while they were trying to dig up enough evidence to arrest her, and at the same time trying to find what happened to Cari. Jim and Ryan watched Liz's tracker on their computers literally 24/7. And what they saw was disturbing and pretty much terrifying. Liz was literally circling Amy's house like a vulture. She would just drive around the block, around Amy's house, over and over and over again on a daily basis, just like a hunter circling their prey. Amy and the kids were inside the house and had no idea Liz was just circling them. Jim and Ryan were getting very concerned for Amy and the kids. In 2015, Dave had been over at Amy's visiting with the kids, and he returned back to his apartment around 8:30ish. He opened his closet door, and he immediately noticed that the case holding his gun had been moved. He opened up the case, and his gun was gone. He called Jim immediately and reported the gun as missing. On December 4th, 2015, Liz walked into Jim's office. Yeah, Liz walked into the sheriff's department and into Jim's office and claimed that she wanted to file a harassment complaint against Amy. What? Ryan took Liz into an interview room, and he told her that it would be helpful if Liz would let them download the contents of her phone to help build a case against Amy. And Liz agreed. I guess Liz didn't realize the guys would probably be able to figure out where the messages had actually originated from. But God, do I love a stupid criminal. On December 15th, 2015, just 9 days after Liz has walked into the sheriff's department, a 911 call came into the sheriff's office. It was a woman claiming that she had been shot and that she was in Big Lake Park, which is pretty much right beside the sheriff's office. The woman tells the dispatcher that there was lots of blood and she doesn't know who shot her, but the shooter was a woman. The caller was Liz, and she had been shot in the leg. The next thing Amy knew, there was a knock on her front door. She opens up the door, and police officers are standing there with their guns drawn, pointed at her. Amy was arrested for shooting Liz. In an interview after she had recovered from her gunshot, Liz tells the investigators that she wouldn't put it past Amy to have been the one that shot her. But what Liz doesn't know is that Jim, Ryan, and Tony don't think that Amy shot Liz. They actually believe that Liz shot herself. They just had to put on a show of arresting Amy for Liz because they figured she was probably sitting in wait and watching for Amy to be arrested. After the interview with Liz, Jim, Ryan, and Tony are convinced that Liz is actually trying to set up Amy for Cari's murder. During the interviews, Jim says to Liz, "I know there's been some hostility between you and Amy," to which Liz quickly responds, "Yeah, it's the same hostility she has towards Cari, too. She says she wants to beat the crap out of her all the time." Okay, when did you and Amy become text buddies? Why would Amy be messaging you? There's my question. But Liz doesn't think that way. So Jim, smart man that he is, says to Liz, "Well, if Amy is bold enough to shoot you in the leg, we think that she's probably bold enough to do something to Cari." Jim then asks, I love this part. Jim then says to Liz, "You know, if you were to go back through your message and email history, just see if there were any messages where Amy has said anything a little bit more threatening than, "I want to beat the crap out of Cari," or that Amy did something to Cari, maybe. Jim tells Liz that, I can't stop laughing. Jim tells Liz that anything like that would really help the police out, because if they had anything like that, they could start building a case against Amy. The entire time, you can see this in the documentary, Liz has this serious look on her face, and she's nodding away saying, okay, yep. A couple of days after that interview with Liz started sending emails to Jim and Ryan from quote-unquote Amy. In one of the messages, Amy confessed shooting Liz at the park because Liz wouldn't stay away from Dave. It was a good start for the case against Liz, but Jim and Ryan still needed more. Meanwhile, Amy and Dave are terrified for their kids' safety and for their own. They knew what Jim and Ryan were doing, and they also knew that there wasn't enough evidence to arrest Liz yet. Can you, just for one iota of a second, imagine how terrified Amy is, or Dave for that matter? I literally would be boarding up the windows, locking the doors, and not coming outside until it was all over. It's shit like this that makes me want to dig a bomb shelter in my backyard and just live there forever and never come out again. Ryan contacted Dave and suggested that Dave move back in with Amy and the kids in order to keep his kids safe. Ryan stated that there were actually two reasons for making this call. The first was, with Dave living at Amy's, there would be a little more protection for Amy and the kids at the house. And the second was that Jim and Ryan knew that once Liz found out that Dave was moving in with Amy, Liz would most likely go off the deep end and make some kind of a mistake. Shortly after Dave moved back in with Amy and the kids, Liz called Jim at the station. I'm going to play you the phone call between Jim and Liz. If you've ever wondered what madness and pure evil sound like, it's on this call. And remember, during this call, Liz is talking about Amy.
This Investigator Doty?
Yeah,
Who am I speaking to here?
Liz.
Liz, what's going on?
She's still not arrested. She gets to shoot somebody, and then she gets to kill another person, and then she gets to move in with Dave, and she gets to be free. And you guys aren't arresting her.
There's only so much I can do if Amy's not talking to us. You still there?
Yeah.
If she does let you know some more specifics, that's the kind of stuff that makes a case.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
If I have ever heard a girl on the edge of cracking, that would be it. And Jim played her like a fiddle. Well done, Jim. That night, after the phone call between Jim and Liz started forwarding emails from Amy, quote-unquote Amy, which were talking about all the things she had done to Cari. Now, these emails contained specific descriptions of what, quote-unquote, Amy had done to Cari. In the email, quote-unquote, Amy states that she stabbed Cari inside Cari's car, then parked in an abandoned lot, then covered Cari with a tarp and burned her body. She then dismembered her body, what was left of it, and put the pieces into garbage bags and threw the bags into dumpsters at apartment buildings around town. Quote-unquote Amy then said she went to Cari's house and took some of Cari's clothing and things to make it look like Cari had run away. She also said that she threw Cari's phone out the window somewhere along the interstate. She even went so far as to describe what Cari's house and bedroom looked like and the furniture inside the house. And then, at the very end of the email, quote-unquote Amy stated that Dave helped her get rid of Cari's body. Jim and Ryan knew it was absolutely Liz writing the emails posing as Amy. This bitch is unbelievable. She's out of control. So literally, Liz is confessing to the murder of Cari. And the murder is bad enough. And what she says happens to Cari's body, if it's true, is absolutely awful. But there's something even more scary about what is happening here. She is trying to set Amy up, an absolutely innocent person in all this, for murder. That is terrifying. You know, if this happened just a few years earlier than when it did, Amy might have been screwed because the technology might not have been available to locate where the emails were coming from. And that is 100% horrifying. So Jim and Ryan got a hold of Cari's car, which was still in evidence, and they reprocessed it looking for any evidence of blood because they believed that Cari had been stabbed in her car because that's what it said in the email. After the forensic crew was done with Cari's car, they literally found nothing. But Jim wasn't giving up. So he himself pulled out the driver and passenger seats out of Cari's car and ripped the covers off. And guess what they found? A blood stain in the foam of the passenger seat. They finally had enough for an arrest warrant. On December 15th, 2016, police picked up Liz. And I will post a picture of this shit demon in the back of the police car when she gets arrested because, well, why not? In the interrogation room, Liz denied everything. Even though her fingerprint was found inside Cari's car, she was never in it, never near it. She never even saw Cari's car. Sure, that's why she had a picture of Cari's car on her phone. The detective in the interrogation room told Liz that everything was pointing at her, and immediately Liz called for her lawyer. Jim, Ryan, and Tony got a search warrant for Liz's house, and there they found some of Cari's possessions, including a digital camera and a camcorder. On the camcorder, they found a video of Cari talking about how someone had vandalized her car, and it was time-stamped 2 days before Jim, Ryan, and Tony believed she was murdered. So now we move to the trial, and the team had an uphill battle. Not only did they have to prove that Cari was actually dead, but they had to convince a judge that Liz had murdered her. Everyone on the case was working 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to find something that they could use to convict Liz. But not just that, they wanted to prove that it hadn't been Cari doing all of this horrible stuff, and that it had actually been Liz behind everything from the very beginning, from that first text, "Hey, we should move in together." Jim, Ryan, and Tony believed that that was Liz, and that Cari had already been murdered. Jim, Ryan, and Tony were going over and over and over all the emails and all the phone records and the pictures. And just to give you an idea of how dedicated these guys were to this case, Tony had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he needed to have surgery because the tumor was growing. He told the doctors, no surgery, not until this case is over. Jim, Ryan, and Tony went back to Dave for another interview just to see if anything might pop into his brain while they were talking to him. And as they were leaving, they nonchalantly asked him, "Hey, do you happen to have any electronics from around 2012 when Cari disappeared?" Dave said, "Well, I'll look. I think I have an old tablet." He went to his storage unit, and there was an old tablet. When Tony got his hands on it, there was a memory card inside the tablet. And when he first plugged in the memory card, it looked as though it had been wiped clean. But because we have Tony, the amazing genius, he was able to look deeper, and he comes across about 11,000 thumbnail images that at one time had been saved to this memory card. Very quickly, the guys realize, just by looking at the images and the timestamps on them, that this memory card had at one point been in Liz's phone. While he was going through all these thousands of pictures, Tony came across a picture of what at first he thought was a piece of wood. But then when he looked at it a little closer, he realized it was a picture of a foot with a tattoo on it. They immediately contacted Nancy to find out if the tattoo in the picture was one that Cari had, and it was. The tattoo was the Chinese symbol for mother, and Cari had it on the top of her foot. They then sent the picture to a coroner to make sure that it actually was a foot, because the picture was a little blurry. And the coroner confirmed that it was in fact a picture of a foot. The picture was a picture of Cari's foot after she had been killed inside the car. So this means that Liz is even more of a monster than we thought, because she is the type of killer who enjoys taking trophies from their victims after they kill them. At the end of the trial, everyone involved was scared that Liz was going to get off and just walk out of court a free woman. Murder cases with no body are really hard to prove. The judge came in and stated that the prosecution had presented overwhelming evidence that Cari was dead and that Liz had murdered her. Liz was found guilty and sentenced to life without parole. She was also found guilty of second-degree arson for burning down her own home, and for that she received an 18 to 20-year sentence to run concurrently with her life with no parole sentence. She should have been charged for killing her animals, the bitch. Jim, Ryan, and Tony estimated that the last day that Dave saw Cari when he kissed her and headed off to work was the last day Cari was alive, November 13th, 2012. And, as I said before, the message that Dave got from Cari asking Dave to move in together was actually from Liz, and Cari was most likely either already dead or immobilized in some way. So this psycho bitch had been terrorizing not only Dave, but Nancy and Max and Amy the entire time. Later, it was determined that Liz had used different applications that would allow a user to create a message to be sent over text to someone, but set a time for the message to be delivered, so that she would receive messages when she was with Dave to make it look like she was just as much a victim in this as Dave was. Diabolical and absolutely horrifying. According to the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, Liz's sentence began on August 15th, 2017, and she remains in custody at their facility and will until the day she dies. To this day, Liz maintains her innocence and states that Cari's real killer is still free. I hate to tell you this, Liz, you're an absolute monster of a shit demon. Cari's father passed away shortly after Cari had disappeared. Her mom, Nancy, states that a few weeks after he had died, she had a vivid dream where her husband came to her and said, "Nance, it's okay. She's with me." Nance knew what that meant, and in her heart, she knew that Cari had passed. But Nancy still had to take care of Max, and Cari was her daughter, and she needed to know what happened and why. Cari's body has never been found. And that, my friends, is the absolutely horrifying case of the murder of Cari Farver. My thoughts. The hurt and harm that Liz inflicted on Nancy and Max is unfathomable. Can you imagine receiving horrible messages from your missing daughter or your mother? Nancy and Max were innocent victims, just like Dave and Cari and Amy. And my heart just breaks for all of them. In the documentary, Dave states that he doesn't feel totally blameless in all of this because he was the one who dated Cari. Let me just say this, Dave, if you ever hear this was not your fault. You were looking for some companionship, that's all. You were honest with Liz. It is not your fault she is fucking insane. But the next time you want to start dating, can you maybe ask a friend to set you up with someone they've known for a few years? And can we delete all the online dating profiles? Please. Liz went into this with flawed desires and deceiving Dave. He was upfront with Liz and told her he wasn't looking to settle down. He just wanted to have a casual relationship. Liz never had any plan to allow the relationship with Dave to be casual. She went in looking to have him for life. But that one night, just seeing Cari for 3 seconds as she walked out of Dave's apartment was enough to flip a switch inside Liz's brain. Jealousy, possessiveness, the ugliest parts of human nature had coalesced into something monstrous within her. Her desperation clawed at her, fueled by the pathetic inability to accept Dave sharing any connection with another person. Liz's jealousy had mutated, warping into something truly dangerous, something that pushed her to the edge of sanity. Perhaps, even now, deep down in the recesses of her mind, she can still justify the horrific act of taking Cari's life, of impersonating her, and of inflicting unimaginable pain in her name. It was as though she had crossed some unrecoverable line, leaving her stranded in a twisted reality where her actions were somehow, to her, justifiable. And now she spends her days alone in a cell, and there she will stay until her last breath. Just as a shit demon should. I do want to address the mental health aspect in this case. It is so sad that the stigmatism of mental health issues allowed this case to sit cold almost 4 years. Cari was missing. She hadn't touched her bank accounts, and no one had physically seen her since November of 2012. She was a great mom to Max, and Nancy told them that none of this behavior was normal for Cari. Those 2 things alone should have told the original police officers that she wasn't just in a psychotic state, that she wasn't just hiding out somewhere, making everyone's life hell. People need to realize that there are hundreds of thousands of people with very real mental health issues that live normal, everyday lives. It's baffling that the possibility of a mental health crisis overshadowed a potential crime in this case. And with that, I think we'll leave it there for this week. Stay safe, get your pap test done, and enjoy your day today. This has been a Bitter Witness production.